was a crazy weekend as violence breaks out at Trump rallies. Many people are blaming Trump. He is blaming Bernie Sanders supporters. Look at what this tells us about the state of the election itself. And then as Hillary Clinton continues to move left, many people are wondering if that's proof that she'll move wherever the votes are coming from. And later on, we're going to talk to a former NYPD lieutenant about the state of the police department and its relationship to Mayor Bill de Blasio. Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman, in for Richard French. Tomorrow night could change the entire race. 5 states go to the polls, hundreds of delegates at stake. And for the inside scoop on the races in both parties, I sat down with Washington Post political reporter Aaron Blake. Aaron, let's start with the Democrats. We know that Bernie Sanders is continuing to make a push. Is there any sign from Hillary of lowered expectations like we saw to a certain extent before Michigan, particularly where Illinois and Ohio are concerned? Is she trying to tamp down expectations at all?
Well, they're certainly not trying to increase them. Illinois shares a lot of the same characteristics as Michigan does. It's a Rust Belt state, obviously, with a significant minority population. I think it's a little bit more friendly of a state for her. She was born there, after all. It's a slightly different situation. You never really know what to expect, but I think everybody's really expecting this to be a close race, and so I think that's what both campaigns are saying right now.
We know that Democratic delegates are assigned proportionally all the way through, so it's a tough path for Bernie Sanders to catch up. Is his approach still trying to catch Hillary in delegates, or is he trying to win states and momentum and hope to maybe sway the superdelegates away from Hillary before they get to the convention in Philadelphia?
Look, I think this is about the convention more than anything. I think it's also about winning states, like you said, making a point that he's still a contender in this race. I don't think his campaign necessarily thinks they can win. I think they would certainly like it if things trended in that direction, and Clinton didn't do so well in some states where she was expected to, starting on Tuesday with Illinois. But, you know, Sanders is in this race for the long haul. He knows he can still win some states. He's good at caucuses, and that really gives him a ticket to ride and be a player in the Democratic National Convention this summer.
But Aaron, if his focus is more on the convention, at some point we'd expect him to take his foot off the gas a little bit where his attacks on Hillary are concerned, correct?
Well, you know, I think that's part of what keeps him relevant in this race. If he just totally backed off and wasn't doing that, I think we'd probably cover him less. He may have less of a good chance of actually winning states if that were the case. So he needs to make it look like he's really trying to win this race. I don't doubt that he still thinks that he can, but I think that goal is probably secondary for him at this point, to just staying in the race and remaining a factor in effectively pulling Hillary Clinton and this entire party more into a space that he's comfortable with, politically speaking.
All right, let's flip over to the Republicans. We know that Ohio and Florida are winner-take-all on Tuesday, and Illinois and Missouri are winner-take-most. So game this out for us. Where do we end up if Trump wins big in all 5 states? Is he pretty much the lock for the nomination? Or what if he just loses Ohio or loses Ohio and Florida? Game plan out where we could be at the end of Tuesday night.
So look, it's actually, I think, a little bit more difficult than people realized for Donald Trump to get to a majority of delegates to win the nomination before the convention this summer. If he wins all 5 states tomorrow, I think he's going to be on that path. If he loses Ohio, which looks like it's the closest state at this point, I think it becomes much more difficult. There are a lot of winner-take-all states out there, but he would really have to run the table from here on out, winning more than, I think, 60% of the available delegates, which, you know, to this point, he's won fewer than half, so that's not a small task. It's certainly not a likely situation that he gets to that majority of delegates, but he would certainly, as far as, you know, getting momentum out of a 5-state win on Tuesday, that would certainly go a long ways toward solidifying his status as the presumptive nominee, and maybe you'd see even more kind of rallying effect around Donald Trump at that point.
We've had a little bit of weird game theory leading up to these primaries. You had Marco Rubio saying, well, my supporters in Ohio should vote for John Kasich. You've got Mitt Romney on the ground in Ohio on Kasich's behalf. Is there any indication that this sort of vote for whoever's doing the best against Trump in your state theory is actually working?
You know, I'm not sure that voters really respond to that. I think they want to vote for who they want to vote for. You know, how many Rubio supporters were there actually in Ohio that would cross over to John Kasich? I'm not sure there's a whole lot. And so, I think that, if anything, is really desperation on behalf of these candidates to try and prolong this race and effectively wait for Donald Trump to do something to disqualify himself that he simply hasn't done yet. And I'm not even sure at this point what that would look like. After all, he's out there talking about how he has no problems with people at his rallies getting violent with protesters, that he'll pay their legal fees. He's taken this in a very different direction than any candidate we've seen in recent political memory, and none of it has hurt him. So the idea that the other candidates are kind of going to run the clock out and hope that he's finally going to totally shoot himself in the foot and disqualify himself just seems a little far-fetched at this point. But it's basically the only thing that they have left to contend with besides trying to hold him short of that delegate threshold.
Though there certainly has been a lot of negative, not just media coverage, but social media and other coverage as well following that rally at the University of Chicago on Friday that was aborted, and some of the language we've heard from Trump since. If the worm was turning on Donald Trump here, if voters were starting to get sick of that, which there's no indication, at least not yet, would we have indicators of that coming through, or would we just have to wait and see that at the polls tomorrow?
I guess we kind of have to wait and see it. And in fact, there's evidence today. There was a poll in Florida, in fact, that showed Trump's the violence, the situation in Chicago at his rally basically had no impact on how people in Florida view him, Republican voters, that is. About 88%, I think, either said that it didn't matter to them, which was the largest chunk of people, or 22% said that it actually made them more likely to back Trump. Only 11% of people said that this was a problem for them, said that his response to this issue was a problem for them. So if we're looking for a game changer for Trump, this certainly does not appear to be it, at least if you believe the results of one poll.
Every time you think this election season cannot get stranger, we get another headline. Aaron Blake with the Washington Post. Thank you so much, Aaron. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Up next, more on Donald Trump, the violence at his rallies, and a historical comparison we think you need to see. And then Saturday Night Live poking fun at the Hillary Clinton campaign, showing Hillary actually morphing into Bernie Sanders. But is her turn left giving critics more ammunition?